So, very excited about this panel tonight. Private practice. Anyone else interested in private practice? You can. Okay, good. I want to make sure you're in the right room. So, we are going to jump right into it with some introductions, and then please feel free. We'll open it up for a panel discussion. Any questions that you have, just like an auction, just kind of wave this up so we can identify who has a question. So, we are going to start with Jennifer.
Okay. So, thank you. You all read, I won't read that again. So I got my MSW here in '98, just briefly. Worked for Sloan Kettering for most of my career and went into private practice July of 2011. And should I throw my piece in?
Yeah.
Okay, so just sort of an opening word of wisdom or something. We were talking about this is so when you, especially for the people who are graduating, kind of when you get out there, just jump in. Don't be afraid. I think we were talking before, and one of the things I was saying is I would sometimes stop myself and think, what did I learn? What did I learn? And kind of just went with what I was intuiting, and that generally is more effective. And, so just don't be afraid when you get out there and you find yourself in a situation where you think you're not equipped to deal with it. You are. I promise. You got a great education, and
so next, Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben. I graduated in 2006, and I'll give you an idea of my trajectory because I think that's helpful. I know for myself when I was graduating, I was thinking, where am I going to go? How do I get there? What do I do? I was fortunate that I was hired by the organization that I interned with, so I continued there. I worked there for a year. Then I put to use some of my research skills afterwards, which I found really interesting because in the program I had a mindset of I'm not really sure I'm going to use this, and so I put together a job proposal and used some of the skills I learned in policy and research, and went to Italy and worked there for a year as a student counselor and set up a mental health program and a study abroad program, which was great, really, really great. Then I came back. The licensing laws were changing at that time for me, and so I went into a clinic and worked in the LGBT unit there at the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services, where I was working towards my LCSW. And once I got that, I started private practice part-time. And gradually built up a caseload and went full-time 2.5 years ago into private practice. So that's been my trajectory, and I think in terms of words of advice, because we were talking about it before, it's very similar, but it's about advocating for yourself. That's one of the main things that I took away from my learning here, and really trusting myself, trusting my learning, and advocating for my needs and the things that I wanted to accomplish, whether that was in an agency setting or whether that was building my private practice. We can talk more about that as we go.
Excellent. Thank you. And Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Goldman. I'm kind of the old timer here, and it freaks me out how long I've been in this field. Since 71, and so I've had quite a professional path. I always knew I wanted to do clinical work, and when I graduated, I started working with children in a residential treatment center, and my career path took me into various mental health agencies and child welfare. When I decided to do private practice, I had just had a baby, and I said I wanted to have some flexibility as well as opportunities for greater income. And I went to an institute to train, and that was a 3-year program. And it was in psychoanalytic psychotherapy. The field has changed remarkably in the 30 years that I've been practicing because, as you know, I'm also an advisor here. You know, there's all sorts of different kinds of therapies now, short-term, symptom focus, you know, research-based therapies, and that's very different from the kind of practice that I have done. I finally left agency practice after many years, and I've gotten tired. And while I had maintained a small private practice all along, I went full-time in 1998, and that's about 12 years ago, something like that, even 14 years ago. And it's running a small business, and you have to be prepared to run a business, particularly in today's age of internet, increased competition, and difficulty finding resources and patients, given that we live in New York City. I guess my one word to everybody, anybody who's interested in either being a clinician or a private practitioner, is get yourself a good therapist, learn about yourself, grow professionally, personally, and get yourself good supervision and hopefully a mentor and somebody who can help you learn and grow. Private practice is not easy, and you're dealing with human beings who are quite complex.
It's true. Yeah. Okay, well, before I open up for questions, just to kind of recap something very interesting, Ben, 4 years post-graduation, and then you went into private practice, correct?
That's right.
And then Jen, 13 years,
Yes.
approximately,
Yes.
into private practice.
Baby in the middle of the
And then,
night,
right.
maternity leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 mommies on the panel.
Yeah.
And then Sue, 27 years post-graduation. With all kinds of, all kinds of, well, you hear the numbers right. So just food for thought for all of us. I mean, that definitely is interesting spread. So along those, that note, questions. We'll just open up. Yes. What's your name?
Ilana.
Hi, Ilana. And speak up, please.
Okay. I was curious, thinking about it practically, if you're working for an agency or organization, you know, let's say for 5 years before you want to start your private practice, is it unethical, you know, to mention to those patients that you're already seeing, or the clients that you're already seeing, you know, clinically, that you're opening a private practice so that they kind of follow with you? Like, what's the ethical situation with that?
I mean, I've had that situation many times, particularly after I left institute training and was working with patients there, as well as when I worked in mental health centers. Sometimes you're asked to sign contracts that you're not to take patients.
I had to do that.
And therefore, if you break your contract, that is really quite unethical and take patients. You have to think about, though, too, the fact that therapy is all about relationships, and one would hope that there is some understanding that a relationship can be transferred outside of an agency. You know, but I think it's agency to agency and how you discuss it with your supervisors and the administrators there.
When I left Sloan Kettering, it sort of started becoming a little, when I told people I was leaving, became a little bit of an issue, and I had signed something and I couldn't and wouldn't have taken people with me. But people ask, they want to know, where are you going, what are you doing? And you know, the internet's out there now, and they certainly are free to Google you, and you know, once you're gone, and you know, if they want to kind of establish contact with you again, sort of down the road when I no longer, you know, that contract is null and void because I'm not working for Sloan Kettering anymore. You know, that's sort of so you have kind of very careful conversations just about, you know, well, I'm going to be out there, and there are probably a lot of ways you could find me if you chose to.
Yeah, I have clients that I worked with in my first job. I have clients that I worked with at my second agency. So I work with clients that I had in different settings. But it is something, I think the most important thing is that there's a conversation that's happening with your agency, with your supervisors, and it is complicated because clients can find you very easily once you go. I've had clients contact me, they saw me on the internet.
Let's go here. What's your name?
Ashley.
Ashley, and your name?
Wardy.
Warde, and your name?
Oh, no, I didn't have my hand up. Oh, you.
Natalie.
Natalie. Okay, we'll go that order.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about the business aspect of the private practice? Like, you know, the pretty part is the clinical part that we all want to do, but can you talk about what it takes from the business? Insurance, all those things.
So just to narrow that down a little bit, because we have an hour.
Okay.
And I'm sure in the collective 50 plus years, there's a lot. So are you talking about the startup in terms of an application for a license, or I've got my LC and what happens next?
Yes.
So practice management?
Yes, like, yes.
Okay.
Um,
So who would
All
like
right,
to?
well, how about I'll say one little thing.
Okay, that
to
works.
add to it.
Absolutely.
What I find the most challenging these days is scheduling. I know that sounds kind of, because I am the only one keeping my schedule, and people are always, you know, I'm going to be out of the country, or I'm sick, or and that is actually so much more time consuming than I ever would have imagined it would be. The insurance piece at this point, I don't find is submitting claims is not as hard because you can do it online. It's an electronic thing. So I, at the moment, am just struggle with scheduling, and the cancellations or the shuffling takes up a lot of my time. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I'll say that it's a different hat that you have to wear, obviously, from being a clinician to being a business owner. And it took me a little while to get that hat on, to start thinking as a business, that I advertise myself, I do outreach, I read a lot about how people build practices. There's several books out there. There's several workshops in the city about building a practice. I had to learn how to do my own accounting. That's something I definitely did not want to do.
Right.
And I had to learn how to use QuickBooks, which is an accounting program. And that took me, I did tutorials through that I ordered online and things like that. And it took a while to get that hat really squarely on. And to go back to something Sue said that was really important for me is that I had a mentor who I could go to and say, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with this aspect of this, how do you do it?
Right.
And that person was able to say, well, I did this, or I don't know, or, you know, or let's talk about it, or whatever. And that was extremely helpful. And so that's something that I think is useful to think about, is who might you be able to establish that kind of relationship with.
Yeah, I agree. There are two hats. There's the clinician and there's the business person. You know, you need an office, you need insurance, you need liability insurance for your office, you need to find out, you know, somebody to take care of, you know, the books and all that. There's billing, which is a bitch with,
But be honest.
yeah, no, billing is a pain. I go nuts, you know, because it's submitting your claims. You know, yes, there are you know, computer programs for billing, but it's a pain in the neck, and particularly if you're running, you know, your show and you have a nice patient load, it's a lot of hard work. I spend at least 2 days a month with billing and keeping track, and then there's record keeping, because you have to keep good records, and then there's, you know, supervision, because if you're starting off in the beginning, you need a good supervisor. And so there's a lot of pieces. I mean, I just decided after many years of accepting insurance that I was going to go private pay, and that was a business decision, because insurance companies pay $60 a session. I mean, that's pretty bad. That hasn't gone up in, well, 15 years at least. So I made that decision. That was monumental. I mean, it's a lot of thinking about how you're going to handle that with your patients? You know, how do you make arrangements for them? You have to think about, are you going to charge for canceled sessions? Are you not? Because, you know, you have to eat. So there's a lot that goes into thinking about a practice and running a practice.
Excellent. And was there any book in particular or a title of one of the lectures that you found most important? This is really good.
Gosh, now that you're asking me, I'm going blank. There's a woman through MSW who does workshops and also wrote a book. There's a woman named Casey Truffaut who has a website that you can also look at. She has a book called Becoming a Wealthy Therapist. And the idea behind that is about making sure that you make a living doing something that you really love and is about helping other people. And so those are a couple of resources. There's lots of blogs also.
Excellent, thank you.
I guess just to piggyback off your question, I guess if we could give like a money range of how much social work students, or social workers should expect to spend on investing in startup, like in terms of taxes, office space rent, how much like in the first year would you expect social workers to pay in terms of starting up their private practice?
I think that's kind of hard to answer. It depends on how much you decide to bite off in the beginning. I mean, I rented one evening from somebody, so every Monday evening for the month to start.
Do they charge by the day or?
She charged me, I think I was paying $250 for the month, hoping to fill those spots. First go around didn't work out so well. I wasn't taking any insurance, and that I think I was also living in Westchester for a little while. I wasn't in the city. So when I came back to the city, I still took that same approach and sort of took a little, I always wanted less because I didn't want to bite off any more than because I was working and also supporting my child. So I would build on as I started getting more clients. And then at some point I just went for it. But it's hard, right? I don't know if that was a similar experience.
Yeah, I had a similar process. One thing that I didn't know about that I think is worth mentioning when I was in school is that there are therapists who hire therapists to work in their practice. And that is something that I did in order to just start. And so I didn't rent an office at first. I was provided an office, and I started with one night, and then went to 2 nights, and then I eventually branched off on my own, and just went full-time in my own practice. But it was a building process, and it is really hard to put any numbers to it because there's websites, there's rentals, and those are going to be different prices, and
I just didn't know, should I spend $1,000 a month or 200, like, things where you can ballpark.
It's, you know, some people will charge you can, there's a psychotherapy building or something right on 34th Street. There are lots of different, so you can do an hourly thing. Some of the institutes will rent for $10 an hour. So you really kind of get creative, sort of poking around for what would best suit your needs.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yes.
I was just wondering, for a full-time practice, how many clients is typical to be sustainable? And if it's very saturated, like, is it too competitive in New York City right now, too saturated?
You know, yeah, there's a huge amount of therapists out there. And sometimes you sort of can say you got to get a gimmick of some sort or a specialization, and that sometimes helps, you know, because you get them, you target your patient population and they find you. I'm a generalist. I do a lot of work in trauma and with medical conditions, and particularly neurological conditions, because I've had a lot of experience with that. So I do get people in that way. But it is competitive. But I'm telling you, since the web has taken over so much and people can find you so easily, it's remarkable. And once you get on an insurance panel, there's a huge amount of referrals coming that way. So then you begin to think when you start your practice, what neighborhood do you want to target? Like my office is on East 70th Street, it's right near New York Hospital. I've been getting, because of some personal relationships I have with the EAP department there, I've been getting a huge amount of referrals from Rockefeller University, Memorial, New York Hospital, and I mean, it's incredible. So you kind of want to think how to position yourself, and then of course, you know, how you advertise yourself online. I'm advertised through Psychology Today. There's also Health Pro, which is also a very big feeder. LinkedIn is another source of getting people in contact.
And Sue, just anyone not familiar with World of Work, EAP is the Employee Assistance Program.
Yes.
Just to make sure.
Yes.
I would just add to that, insurance, if you get on a few insurance panels, I mean, at this point, I have a waiting list. I still haven't kind of, you know, and I don't feel that I haven't been practicing long enough that I'm ready to sort of make the leap into not taking insurance yet, and I'm doing fine. So if you can get onto, you know, 3 nice, you know, reasonable panels, and it turned out that the panels I got on, I happened to be surrounded by all these companies that have employees within a 5-block radius of my office, and so I, you know, see half of it. It's interesting, but so I'm full because I take insurance. I don't know what would happen, you know, and I have a website, but I don't know what would happen if I haven't crossed that. I'm still too new.
Did you have your hand up before?
Well, that was actually my question too, is like what amount, like ballpark range is amount of clients that's sustainable to live your life, but also manageable?
That's a very good question.
Depends on your life.
I was just going to say, right?
Right.
And your clients.
I find for myself that, you know, when I was in an agency, I was constantly in this struggle of how many clients they wanted me to have and how many really felt sustainable and things like that. And then when I went into private practice, I became the agency. And then my experience kind of changed, and I began to, I went through a process where I overscheduled myself. I still struggle with this, saying no when people contact me, or saying I have a waiting list, which I do. Things like that are difficult. And so I currently, just to give you some figures, I have 35 clients. And I don't see every client every week, and so I have a couple of clients I see every other week. You know, people always, there's always cancellations each week. There's always someone out of town, things like that. So I can't think of a single week where I've seen all of my clients in one week. And I've found that works okay for me. And I was co-leading a group, and I recently took that off my schedule because my time has become so valuable to myself.
Along that line, there's I don't know. Actually, I won't put anyone under pressure, but through the Silver Career Professional Development tab that's been added, if you haven't received the email, definitely see Leslie. But there was several that have gone out over the last couple of weeks, and through that tab, it's this new resource that we have through NYU classes. There are tons of links that actually address, I'm sorry I forgot your name, but these startup costs.
Oh, Lord.
There were, so you go to one link, and then of course there's several resources. You can click another one, and you hear really explicit kind of raw narratives like I was broke, but there's also the happy ending, you know, and of course that they were able to build their career in very similar stories in terms of once I got insurance, you know, I was able to receive insurance. Then my practice took off, and there was a very detailed narrative about separating from the insurance and going into cash for service. So through the CPD, so again, for anyone who hasn't gotten a chance to look that over, also there's resources in there for building your resume, for shaping how we will walk away with our degrees. But along that line, there was one of the questions here that students wanted to know is, what other professional associations or different, NASW as an example, affiliations that help to build your practice, or do you juggle any of those, or are you currently juggling those while you're in your practice?
I don't think there were any real professional organizations that helped with the practice. That doesn't. I just wanted to expand a little bit on the last question. Now, there are many. Other than being a clinician sitting and doing psychotherapy in your office, there are other things to do if you want to be a private practitioner. Just to give you an example of my week, 3 days a week I see patients, and I have about 20, 21 patients I see in those 3 days. Other things I do, I'm a faculty advisor here. I also like to do things that are social worky, and I have a couple of geriatric case management cases. And that is a very lucrative profession nowadays, and people do geriatric case management full time. But it's a little tweak from the norm, because private practice is really demanding. It really is, and it's also very lonely. The other thing is, I've done, based on my child welfare thing, I do adoption home studies. I do forensic evaluations for attorneys regarding child custody cases. So there's a whole range of things you can do as a private practitioner, and some of those, like forensic work, very lucrative. So I mean, those kinds of things help.
Did you need any? I'm sorry, but did you need any additional certifications or licenses or courses to do those kinds of things?
It basically was my experience that I brought, and there are organizations like for forensic examiners which you can belong to that give you additional credibility.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay.
Well, I actually can. Oh.
No, it got lost.
Okay. In terms of organizations, because you said a really important piece about how this can be a lonely direction to go in, because for the most part, is me in a room all day with people that I help in more of that direction, and so it has been really important to build those kind of networks. And even though I can't say that I've gotten clients necessarily from the organizations that I'm a part of, that I have had more of a support for myself. I have a peer supervision group that I meet with other therapists. I do that once a month. I'm a member of EFT, which is a couples-based model for doing couples therapy. I also am part of an organization called System-Centered Therapy, which is about group work, and so things like that give me a sense of community, and occasionally I get a referral from those sources, but it's definitely not a practice builder.
Jen?
Just real quickly to add also to, again, not necessarily for practice building, but just for sort of our own self-care. My office is on the Upper West Side, and I have become part of this Upper West Side Alliance, which is sort of an online group. It's a network, and I've met so many people through the network, and we refer to each other, and if we have a question about something, we post it, and so it just sort of tied into something peer-wise. In addition to, I have a peer who we sort of have our own little, I guess, intimate supervision together. But I also, there are other opportunities, like there's something called Give an Hour. There are some volunteer opportunities. So for military families, you can donate an hour of your time a week to providing services to an uninsured, and I'm not sure how that happens exactly, so I won't even get into it. But so I became part of that, and that got me kind of interested in just sort of military families, and and then I started working through that with this man who just reached out to me after seeing me on the list, who started a group called Stop Soldier Suicide. So you know, the more you kind of put yourself out there, I think it's just, you know, it leads you to something else. So, and sometimes referrals will come through my alliance anyway. So.
Sorry, what's your name?
Shauna.
Shauna, and what's your name back there?
Elizabeth.
Shauna, then Elizabeth, Kathy, and Lissa.
Sarah.
So my question actually, you mentioned LinkedIn, and I was kind of wondering if you guys could speak to like social media and kind of using that to advertise, and whether or not you guys maintain blogs or subscribe and comment, try to put yourself out that way.
I find LinkedIn, they have groups for therapists, and it's very interesting to be part of a discussion group.
Especially because they're nationwide. Too,
They're
right?
nationwide,
so
right, and they're
also
actually
very
multidiscipline, some
Yes.
of them too.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun, you know, and you kind of get a sense about what's going on. Like somebody was talking about taking credit cards in your private practice.
Right.
So, you know, they tell you who to call, you know, and what to get for credit cards, you know, that doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's really, it's a good way to stay connected.
In terms of social media, so I initially set up a Facebook page, and then I thought, this is weird. I don't know. Facebook is, so I haven't really done much with it, but on my website, every once in a while, I'll post something that I've written or something that someone else has written that I think would be a helpful link. But I've kind of shied away from Facebook just because it's like sort of, you know, two worlds colliding, and I don't really want them to. I don't.
Yeah, I think you have to be very thoughtful about how you put yourself out there.
Yes.
And where you put yourself. I mean,
Right.
you know, and how you want to portray yourself as a professional. So,
Yeah.
A life without Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be.
Right.
Elise?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
I have a question. I was wondering if any of you run groups and how, like, if you wanted to do groups in private practice, how, I don't know, how that shapes up dealing with either insurance companies, or can you, I don't know, treat someone in a group and also see them individual? I'm just kind of...
So are you saying the practice
just
of a group?
Like if you wanted to run a group, like how do you go about that? Like dealing with either insurance companies or I guess recruiting, or if any of you actually do any of that or have done that?
I've been co-leading a group for the past 3 years, and like I said, I'm just now moving out of that. But I really enjoy group work, and in terms of billing, it's pretty, I found for myself that it's been pretty straightforward with clients. The building a group, that's difficult. Finding clients, most of the clients in the, well, all of the clients in the group came from individual work with either me or the other therapist. And continue to see the people individually that are in the group, whether that's every week for some clients, or for some clients it's more of a touching base once a month to talk about how the group is going, the things that are coming up, sort of the main issues to address in group. So that's how I've been doing it, the structuring.
I don't run groups, and that's probably because my office isn't large enough to accommodate it. But I do think from a business perspective, you can service multiple clients and use your time effectively as well as provide a service. But I think like anything else, groups are complex, and if you're going to run them, you probably would be well trained in running groups.
I'm sure this varies, but I'm just curious what your, how many hours a week or hours a day you work, and what that day looks like. And
So I guess how does it vary from field placements?
I think I'm still sort of trying to find what's working for me, and I think that it probably will change as the complexion of my life changes. I have a 7-year-old right now, so a lot of my thinking is sort of how do I set my hours up so that I can still maximize my time with him. So of course, you know, the most popular time is to offer individual therapies between 5 and 8:30, which is when he goes to bed. So, you know, I've kind of said, okay, I'm going to give 2 nights a week I'll work late, but I'm not going to work late the other night so that I can be with him because obviously he's, you know, I felt that he needed to be my priority. I don't work on Mondays. I work 9 to 7 on Tuesdays. I think it's just an individual thing, and I think it's going to always be changing. Fridays I work half a day in the morning because I like to pick him up after school and have after school time with him. So, you know, it just depends.
I used to start work at 7:30 in the morning to accommodate people working, and then work evening hours too, and I decided that just wasn't what I liked. And so my hours have really basically shifted. I work like 9 to 6:30, and I have to turn away a lot of people who need evening hours, but I do get a lot of people like teachers or people who freelance. So you know, it kind of forms your patient population.
Right.
And I guess, as you say, you do what works for you, and hope for the best.
My attitude when I first started was whatever it takes. I worked Saturdays, I went in the morning and I worked until evening, and sometimes that was sporadic, and I would have 3 hours during the afternoon where I would go to Trader Joe's and go to Macy's. And so it really varied. And then once I had a good client base and I could really start structuring more, I have a very set schedule now. I work 12 to 8 Monday and Tuesday, 9 to 6 Wednesday, Thursday 12 to 8, and Friday 9 to 6. And so that's the way I structure my schedule, and I have little breaks that vary during the week based on how things have to shift around in those hours. And it's been extremely helpful for me to have that kind of a set schedule. But when I first started, it really was whatever it takes.
Which is kind of nice, because it is, in a lot of ways, I mean, I have gone to sort of working a very structured schedule for when I worked at the hospital, so really being able to kind of, you know, set it up so that I could get my son to school, and I could take a shower, and I could go in and start, and so it's almost some freedom in being able to make it work for you.
To being your own boss. That's
Yeah, but the only thing there is, while there is the freedom to set it up as you want, you have to be at the same place at the same time all the time. So you know, you have to. It's a very different thing. You don't have the flexibility to say, oh, I want a cup of coffee. I'm going to go to Starbucks. You know, you just have to be there. So and that was, I think that was one of the more difficult things for me, that you just had to be there.
So, Kathy, then Sarah.
Listen.
Oh, Alyssa.
Sure.
Sorry.
You know, a lot of us are going to be starting the workforce soon, and I just was wondering what advice you have as to what jobs would be sort of helpful in getting us where we want to go. I mean, you know, there's certainly the piece of wanting to develop our clinical skills, and also at some point maybe having enough flexibility we could start working at night or something. I don't know. What other things should we be thinking about? Any suggestions for work?
So would it be useful to hear maybe the 2 or 3 jobs that they had post-graduation? So what they got first and
Sure,
kind of
and
how
like
the
the pros and cons
career
of
journey.
those
Okay.
work.
So can you start at them, Sue, and work over here?
My first job was at a residential treatment center with horrendous supervision. And after 6 months, I said, I can't stand it. I was so disorganized, and I left, and I went to Jewish Board. And Jewish Board is an agency, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, it's a real old social work agency. It is very invested in staff development. Great supervision, great training, and that kind of environment where you have an agency committed to supervision, which is very hard to find these days in quantity and quality.
Mhm.
is really important. And so I stayed at Jewish Board for about 3 years. And then it coincided with me starting my training in psychotherapy. And, but I think supervision is really the key, and so you develop yourself as a professional.
Yeah, I, like you said earlier, I was hired by the agency I was working with my internship. I went into a chemical dependency treatment program, and I was very clear about what I wanted to specialize in. I wanted to specialize in working with the LGBTQ community. And so I created every opportunity I could within that agency to make sure that I was doing that. I ran groups that were for the LGBT community. I created groups, things like that. Then my experience in Italy was really, really helpful for me in terms of knowing that I could do a private practice because I basically created my job. And so that was really helpful, looking for opportunities where I could create and, like I said earlier, kind of advocate for myself and what I wanted. I went to the Jewish Board, and I was there for 3 years. And they have an in-house institute where they provide training. And so I graduated from the in-house institute. Had supervision, group supervision, individual supervision. That was extremely helpful. They also were an organization that worked with me around what I wanted, and within the within the limits that they could provide. But they allowed me to shift my 40 hours around so that I could leave Wednesday afternoon and go into private practice because I was working full time as I was building, and they allowed me to go part-time. And then they allowed me to go fee-for-service. And so I was able to gradually reduce as I was building. And they knew from the get-go when I came in that my goal was to be in private practice. And they were very generous in still investing in my development as a clinician. So that's been my process.
Yeah, I would just build upon that. I was hired also by the place where I interned. So I was with Sloan Kettering, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and we also had just a very, very structured program for supervision, for practice development, for clinical. We were affiliated, or we were at least given privileges to do trainings at Payne Whitney, at Rockefeller. I mean, we really sort of got to be part of a whole consortium of what was going on kind of within the New York Hospital, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Rockefeller community. So, you know, I had a practice group, I had an individual supervisor, we had a case conference, we had, you know, there were so many opportunities to really get good, solid supervision. They also were as flexible as they could be with hours in terms of, hey, you know, if I leave at 5 or 4:30, you know, so I can start practice building, is that okay? And there was room for that. But I think finding an agency that has solid clinical support is really key.
It's hard to do also.
Yeah.
Not many people had the experience that I had, so I also want to put that out there. And I think it's important to create those experiences in whatever way you can. Getting if you have a bad supervisor, please get supervision outside of the agency. Things like that to help prepare you if your goal is to go into private practice. Or even if your goal is to stay, to prepare you as a clinician for doing the best work you can.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short. And
Right.
stay at a place where you're not feeling appreciated, supported, and you don't get the kind of work that you need to grow.
But if you are stuck there, I guess, you know, there are, I started it wasn't because I was stuck, I just was interested in doing some postgraduate training, and so I started going to the Gestalt Institute, and that was another way for me to then have even more supervision and more, clinical hours, because I had to see clients in their clinic, and so you find if you don't have it in the job, and it is hard sometimes to really get the good job that has all these services. So, postgraduate centers.
Okay. So collectively, you're saying
yes.
Supervision,
yes.
a specialization, or some creative freedom over programming, and if you have an idea, bring that to the table as well, and then the flexibility with the schedule.
Yeah.
So we have about 13 minutes left. So Sarah, then Pam, and Lindsay.
Since some of you have some further training at institutes, I wonder what you think about post-MSW getting hired somewhere versus going straight to an institute if you know that private practice is what you're interested in terms of training supervision and also accruing hours toward your C, pros and cons for both.
I personally, and I think it's such an individual thing,
yeah.
but I felt it was really important. I wanted the structure of an agency behind me for as long as I felt I needed it. I would have, but I was able to do that and also go for the postgraduate training. I would do that on Friday nights. I just felt that I really wanted to have as much of a solid foundation kind of in being out there, in the clinical world, not on my own quite yet. And so I did them both at the same time. And a lot of the institutes make it easy for you to do that. They'll, we met every other Friday night, and then there were a couple of just intensive weekends, and I think most institutes probably offer, kind of flexibility that way. So, but that's, that was sort of how I felt.
I think there's something important about continuing with agency practice for a piece of time. It exposes you to things that you probably wouldn't if you just went right into an institute training. Many institutes, though, like the one I went to, they do patients, and that's part of the training. So, depending, some programs are more rigorous than others, but it's really a very individual matter.
Pam?
Here. My question is a little more, right to the point. Can you give more? I'm in the 16-month program, and there's a lot of, I had a career before this, and a lot of people that are in the program that have also. So just sort of, I feel like there's a lot of ambiguity around sort of what an annual salary could be for full-time private practice. Is there any way that you could give a ballpark?
I'm going to actually go ahead and deflect that question, or really just redirect it again through the Silver CPD site. And it's a great question, and believe me, I would like to know. I know that I spoke with working private practice psychoanalyst that's here, and he was kind enough to share that he just broke 6 figures. So, but this was after many years of practice, and that it included his salary as an adjunct. So,
but is there any idea to what's starting out? So when you're building your practice, just to get an idea of what it would be.
Again, so we just in the interest of time, can we just come back to that one?
Sure.
Because that's a little bit much to kind of give to a mass audience, but it's a great question. And I also, again, I have some resources I will get you. Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. So the institutes, can you go into which institutes you think are the best for training afterwards? Just a couple of names. And second, you're like, no. And second,
there's so many of them.
And secondly, just so I have this laid out in my mind, So you graduate, you take your exam, and you get certified, you get a job. But hopefully what you're saying is you get a job with someone that will supervise you to count towards the 3,000 hours.
Yes.
And then you're saying that while you're getting the 3,000 hours, you would likely go to an institute.
You could. I mean, it depends on how much you wanted to take on.
Okay, and then how long do those programs last, like at the institutes?
They're all very.
2 to 4 years, you know, depends, right? Like,
Right,
it could
and
be-
how they're structured.
Some of them have certificates, some of them have a whole, 4-year training, some of them really
Some of them
depends.
have 1-year
Yeah.
programs too.
Depends on what it is.
But usually they meet like once a week or?
There's such a variety
Yeah.
out there, and also so many of them have specialties.
Right.
Like you have Gestalt.
Right. And there's
The
Ackerman.
there's Ackerman,
which is
there's
fantastic,
just
yeah.
so many.
It's kind of like finding a grad's program.
Mhm.
I approached that in a very similar way. I just went to open houses.
Yeah.
I read about particular forms of therapy that are out there. I mean, there was so much out there.
Because it has to really be sort of what are you interested in? I mean, Ackerman is great if you want to do, couples and family work, and but if but at the same time, I was very interested in just the concept of Gestalt therapy, and so that was sort of why I went that route. But so it has to. I think you have to really think about
I was thinking, for training, conferences are a great way
Yeah.
to begin to see what's really out there. There's, I don't know if people know about the Psychotherapy Network or conference that's held in Washington every year. It's fabulous for seeing kind of the new trends, and that can kind of guide you. Milton Erickson Foundation does great clinical conferences, and you really see some of the stars of the therapy field there. And it's very exciting because it can turn you on to all sorts of different kinds of fields of practice.
Yeah, William Allenson White is another good one, and they have a clinic, so you can, I think you can get some experience clinically through them, so it's fine.
What was the name of that conference in DC?
Psychotherapy Network.
So I didn't get your name, but you had a hand and then next to you.
I was wondering if you guys went about finding space or an office at the beginning of your practice, and if that has evolved over time, or if you transitioned to a different space.
Yeah, I've been in 3 different spaces. There are some websites like therapy rental. I don't even remember what they're called, but if you Google, they'll pop up. That's how I found them. But you could also look at MSW's website. You could look.
Right, they have a lot. And it depends on your needs.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I actually bought an office and I rent out space. So, it really depends.
Yeah.
Did you hear that on the far end? We're not talking numbers, but
Right.
right next to you. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Brenda.
Brenda?
I'm wondering how much your areas of interest have changed or switched since you were studying until now.
Huge. I thought I wanted to work with kids, then I had my own kid. And then in the course of working in different agencies, I got into, I worked at the Epilepsy Institute. Never thought I'd be interested in epilepsy. All of a sudden, I really found that very challenging and engaging, and started to develop further into neurological diseases and disorders. So it just is fluid depending on where you kind of bring yourself in the field and who you kind of get in touch with.
I think that's what's so beautiful about the field is that you can evolve and change. And I started out in doing grief and bereavement, and that kind of led into family work and then couples, and now I love working with couples. But I wouldn't have necessarily known that early on. But it seems for me it's nice to sort of be able to have that variety and to change it up every once in a while, or discover a new area of interest. So.
Yeah, I started off really wanting to work kind of on a broad spectrum with the LGBTQ community, and now say my practice is 95% gay men. And so that's kind of narrowed in and focused, and that is kind of like this specialty focus that keeps bringing people in my door. I also have found that I really enjoy couples work, and so that's something that's really grown for me, that I thought I would be doing individual and group, and now I do a lot of couples and individuals, and so that's shifted. But yeah, the good thing, I want to piggyback on that, the good thing is that there's kind of also what we were saying before, I always feel like I'm discovering something new and I'm growing, and that there's a new training I can go to, or there's new research that shows that such and such is effective. So it's constantly shifting and growing and expanding, and that to me is one of the most exciting things about our field.
So we'll make this the last question. For anyone who didn't have a chance to ask your question, or I know that being in this type of environment, if you're nervous to speak up, feel free to post them on our website in the forum through CPD, or you can post them on Facebook page for 2013 graduates, and we'll try to get your questions answered there. So this will be the last question.
It's a really quick one. I just wanted to know if you accepted client referrals. Like if your client says, oh, I have a friend, can I refer them to you? I understand some people don't for ethical reasons. I wondered if you
I think you would need, I welcome patients who refer patients.
Sure.
However, I think you would always want to have dialogues with the referring person about, their feelings about it, because oftentimes it does raise a lot of countertransferential issues, so you want to be careful.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with scheduling and things like that. I've had clients who have referred a client, and then lo and behold, I have not thought about that, and they're scheduled right next to each other.
They are in the waiting room together.
They're in the waiting room, things like that. And so it's, lots of processing and talking about that experience, and any time a referral is made.
So that scheduling issue comes back full circle.
Well, no, it's
yeah. All right, well, I think we should thank our panelists. On behalf of the school, thank you everyone for coming this evening. Great questions, and congratulations to everyone who's getting ready to graduate.